Hello everyone. No. Welcome back. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. How many videos have I recorded which I claim are going to be my return to YouTube? Too many. More than I am willing to admit. I don't know how to bridge that gap of me being like, hi, I hope you can spare a few minutes and watch this video of me talking to the ether after vanishing for a year. I think it's been maybe more than a year. And I'm also like cringing at myself when I say like, I'm back, because what if I'm not back? What if this is once more my one video I post in the year? So maybe I'll just drop all that pressure. So I have my reading journal with me at the moment, and what I'm gonna do, because I think this is the only way that I can make some sense of this video, is to go through all of the book entries that I have in here and fill you in on what's been good. Friends, the first book, okay, I read in 2022. Is it 2022? Wait, oh my god. Sorry. I don't even know what year it is. I just turned 24 and no I didn't. I'm still 21. Okay. The first book I read in 2023 was Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. Look at those tabs. They're alive and well. This is the first book I read. And honestly, that sucked for me. That still sucks for me. Because there's something so frustrating, albeit wonderful and beautiful and a treasure, to read a book that in your heart of hearts you're like, yep, that's my favorite book of the year, it's done. Because then there's that part of you that's like, okay, so why would I keep reading? Like, maybe I'll just find a different hobby for the rest of the year and focus on that because it's done, it's over. Thankfully I didn't do that, and I kept reading because I have read some other beautiful, spectacular, disturbing, moving, etc. books this year. But The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli is a book. It's so hard to describe, but it's essentially a family of four: mom, dad, girl, boy. The girl is the daughter of the mom, and the boy is the son of the dad. They're not actually, you know what I mean? They go on this road trip. Not a happy road trip by any means. It's a road trip for work. They both work. I don't want to complicate this too much, but the mom focuses on, like, her current job is to do different recordings of the child refugee crisis at the US and Mexico border, and the dad is focusing on like the genocide of indigenous people, like the history of that in those regions that they're doing this road trip through. And then, it's simultaneously you're witnessing the deterioration of this family, as well as two adults that are extremely passionate about these really heavy causes, just letting themselves become completely encompassed by them to the point that they end up partially neglecting their own children. And that's an energy like that the children can feel. So then the children, are on their own journey as well. Oh, and it bums me out because I feel like every time I go to explain this book, most people will be like, that's not interesting. But it was fantastic. It rocked my world. I still think about it and it gives me goosebumps. And I know that part of that is because that dynamic of four, like the boy, the girl, the mom and dad, parallels my situation with my own family, because I have my mom and my dad and my brother, my older brother, which is the same case for the book, and we're from Mexico, so the topics that are discussed in the book are very important to me. And it was just fantastic. And the book has multimedia, like there's some images within it and maps. You see what I mean? Anyway, it was fantastic, and I brilliantly paired it with the audiobook. And the audiobook has a full cast and it has sound effects, and it was just the perfect, most beautiful reading experience. And I saw so much of myself and my brother in this book so naturally. Like, bitch, do not, that's like a little boy and a little girl. Okay, it's also not a true story. It's just done so well that there's little images in here. And I sobbed, like in fetal position on the couch, like could not get a grip. I could not get a grip. And Michael was very concerned. I think it was one of the first instances that he's truly seen me just at the mercy of a book. And boy, was I at its mercy. It was a grim sight. But of course, read it. Absolutely read it. Then I read At Certain Points We Touch by Lauren John Joseph. This one, I wanted to love, okay? I wanted to love. It sounded like the kind of book that was made for me, the kind of books that I gravitate towards, the kind of books that almost every time I love. And there were some parts that took place in Mexico, and I was like, check, 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 check. No, lads, no, no, no. And at first, too, I was so into the style of prose. It felt very elegant and beautifully crafted, but it quickly kind of turned just like a bit like show-offy, if that makes sense. I can usually stomach a novel that describes, you know, young adults or adults being reckless, using drugs, living that crazy life, and like dating people that are just bad people, and I'm here for the ride, you know? But this one, I just felt like there just wasn't really any redemption to it. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. And some of the descriptions were just so crass. Mom, dad, grandparents, anyone that's like my superior, just cover your ears for a second. There was like this one scene where he's like describing, or they're describing, like this sexual encounter that they had with their partner, and there's like CUM on their chest or something, and the description is like wanting to scoop it up like a chip in guacamole. No! Absolutely not, guys. We just don't need that. Moving on. Nope. Then I read Fresh Water for Flowers. This was a sweet read. Yeah, it's a chunkier read, and I spent a significant time with it, but to be quite honest with you, I can't really remember a lot of it other than the fact that it was about this woman that was just living, loving, laughing, working at a cemetery, and like a groundskeeper at a cemetery, and she wanted nothing more, even though people didn't really understand why. That's what she would want to do. And then it kind of becomes a little bit more complex as more characters enter the scene, and they're all kind of interconnected in a unique way. But quite frankly, I don't remember how. I do remember I enjoyed it though. Okay, then we have Bear by Marianne Engel. That one's right here. Only a Canadian classic. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about a woman that is staying in a cabin in Canada, somewhere in Canada, in Northern Ontario, shout out. And there's this bear, you know, tucked away, and she gets involved with the bear sexually. Do with that absolutely what you will. Not my business. However, vibes, if that is your jam, the other version of this that I personally thought was better was Rachel Ingalls' Mrs. Caliban. First of all, what a cover! And this one is about a woman and a frog man. And it was stunning. It was stunning. Heart was going pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Not in like a blushy way, but the turn it takes at the end, gasp. So good. That's a cheeky little extra recommendation for you. Okay, no, I'm probably overthinking it, but I do just kind of want to have a quick little caveat that I very casually mentioned 2 books that about women having sexual relationships with animals. Of course, I'm not condoning bestiality, okay? Please, 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 please. It's much bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like, you have to think about what the message behind this woman being with a bear means, and what this woman with a frogman means. Stay sharp. Alright, then we have The Crying Book by Heather Crystal. So this one is just a collection of essays, and they all talk about the different times that tears or crying have played a role in the author's life. And it was so comforting and consoling and cathartic, and I can't think of any other adjectives other than those three. It was so lovely. It was so lovely. Give this a go. It was so beautiful. I loved it. All right, then I read a second Stephen King. Can I hear a... Okay, crowd goes absolutely wild for my growth, because if you remember, like a few months back, I kept saying that I was scared to read Stephen King because it's just like, you know, this big author that everyone loves, and I just stare at those little mass markets and I'm like, one day. And I did like 2 years ago. I read Misery, and it was fantastic. It was so good. I still think about it to this day. And it was time for the next one, and that was The Shining. It was very good. I enjoyed it. Misery still reigns supreme, just FYI. Yeah, his ability to describe scenes and like depict characters in like a very, very eerie way is very impressive, and I'll give him that. I'll give him that. Then we have Sex Cult Nun. I don't know if I need to say more. This is unfortunately a memoir. It's like maybe like 250-ish pages. We could have left it at 50 pages tops, you know? Not because it was like poorly written or anything of the sort. It's just so heavy and it's so disturbing, and to know that it's real and to know that so many people probably have to go through things like this, disgusting. It's disgusting. Truly, the only reason I was able to get through it is because I knew that since it was the author that was writing this memoir, that I knew that she had made it out on the other side, and therefore I wasn't like waiting for this person to die. Ugh, yeah, Sex Cult Nun is the name. We'll just say that. All right, then I read Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. This is another one that's been in just teasing dust on my bookshelves for the past few years. Like, I trekked that baby girl from Ontario to BC, and it was still just sitting there looking at me like, you're lazy, you're lazy, you're lazy, you're scared of Chucky bugs. And she was right. And I'm glad that I overcame that and read this book because it was so beautiful. It's a historical fiction. There are so many different characters in this book, but at the core, there's the main character that kind of ties everyone together, whose name I forget now. And it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And every character, even if it didn't get a lot of screen time or page time, each one felt genuine, and I was curious in each one. None of them felt just like, okay, you were just trying to fill up pages, if that makes sense. Loved it. It was so, so sweet. Then I read The Death of Vive. Girl. This was so marvelous. And quite frankly, if you're still one of the few people like myself that hadn't gone around to reading it, and you also, like myself, didn't know anything about it, just keep on going. Don't look into it. Don't read the blurb, like the description. I think it's best to just kind of go in without really knowing. At least that's what I did, and I just thought, like, I was floored. It was so fantastic. Then I read My Last Innocent Year. What can I really say about this? It is yet another book about an inappropriate relationship between an adult and a minor in a school setting. We've seen it done, and this sounds, I'm a little bit trepidatious to say anything about it. Like, I enjoyed it for what it was, but sometimes I just think the genre, and I hate to call it that because pedophilia is a real thing that is disgusting and horrendous. And I know I don't need to be clarifying this. I know you know this, and I know this, and okay? But sometimes I think the genre is just so saturated, and there's just like no more nuance being added to the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I feel like it's just all been said before. And I'm still gonna read them because I do find it interesting to see if anyone can add a new perspective to it, or something, I don't know, something like to probe a further conversation. I'm not entirely sure. Which, by the way, I want to do a whole video talking about Lolita and the effects of Lolita and the fetishization of Lolita and like the problems with the covers on the book covers of Lolita. I'm passionate about this one, so we'll come back to this topic. So yeah, that was it. You know, it's fine. My Last Innocent Year by Daisy Alpert Florin. I did end up DNFing, so I can't say too much because I know people will get up in arms about me saying I didn't like a book if I didn't finish it, and fair enough. But I did read like half, if not a bit over half, of Less by Andrew Sean Greer. Nope. I also got like halfway through Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. Also, I had such high expectations for this, and as someone that worked in a restaurant for a very long time, I was craving that, like, not that my restaurant experience was very crazy, like this one was very much like a drug trip throughout. It was just, we get it, you do cocaine, like, move on. Then I read Good Girl by Anna Fitzpatrick, okay? This is a book about, how can I say this succinctly? It's about a girl that is clearly unsure of where she is in life, what she wants from life, etc. So she thinks that she's into BDSM, or she's using BDSM as a way to, I don't know if like to cope is the right word, but just to kind of like invest her time into and think that this is like what her thing is, you know? Yeah, see, this is the sentence I wrote in here. Eroticism and violence cover pre-existing wounds. And at first, it was so like audaciously bold. I was gripped. I was just like zoom, like into it. And then it kind of slowly lost my interest as it went. It definitely like left me, because I remember my friends were asking me what I was reading, and like my non-reader friends were asking me this, and my male friends in particular, like that, those were their descriptors, and I was trying to explain it to them, and I was just like, oh, it's really hard for me to explain this book to you, or to explain to you like what this person's motive is or why the focus is on BDSM. But I did write here, lack of boundaries and self-respect, again, pre-existing, not because of an interest in kink, cloud her intentions. Is this something she genuinely wants, or is she just desperate for control? To feel something, seeking it in the extremes? These were all thoughts I was having, you know? Then I read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is a story time. I'll save it for another one. But yes, I did meet Elizabeth Gilbert. Okay. Then I read What Remains of Elsie Jane by Chelsea Wakelin. Friends and family, if you haven't read this, you know, put it on the plastic. Tap, tap, swipe, swipe. Do what you gotta do. Read this book. It is based in Vancouver Island, which obviously was just the treatiest of treats. And it's about grief. It was hilarious. I cried. I laughed. I felt absolutely everything about it. And I also had the honor of hosting the book launch for her event. And we hugged because I told her all these things, and I was just like, you did the thing, you did the damn thing, because this is your debut and you made someone feel so much, and that's so impressive. And I imagine that as an author, that would be such like an accomplishment. So I told her all these things, and she was like, can I give you a hug? And I was like, come here. Okay. Then I read Checkout 19 by Claire Louise Bennett. Frankly, I was loving it. I was devouring, chomping her down. And then I think I was just not cerebral enough to understand it, because there was like one chapter that was like 1/3 of the book, and I was just like, I don't understand this. But then I looked it up on Audible, and apparently a lot of people felt the same way, so maybe we can all be a little bit dumb together. Then we read Paradise by Fernanda Melchor. Fantastic. I have this little cheeky little review thingy. So it says, a gated residential, pristine and eggshell white, freshly mowed lawns, flower beds damp from the morning's watering. Beneath this acrylic veneer exists a darkness, a volatile humanity. Violent streaks of red make an abrupt appearance when a privileged young resident tempts a struggling employee with the promise of a better life. In a mercilessly succinct fashion, Melchor crassly exposes the classism, colorism, and sexism rampant in Mexico, my home country. Okay, anyway, also, sidebar, if you liked the film Parasite, you know what I'm talking about? You'll like this book. Okay, you know what, friends? I think I might have to leave it there because we still have months left, and I simply... Okay, I think this is a sign from the universe, because as I was doing that clip that just got cut off, my camera shut off because it said I had reached my yapping limit. So I think we're gonna leave it at that, and then I'll do a second part to this because there's lots to talk about, lots to say, and the ones coming up are good. And maybe I'll actually plan it so that I actually have the physical stack and I can share them with you instead of always plopping up the image up there. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, and I thank you for your understanding. Well, perhaps you won't be understanding and I'm speaking too soon, but thank you for watching if you watched. Also, crazy that my how I annotate video has like 27,000 views. Hello, that's crazy, but also so cool, because if I'm honest, like, that's my greatest thing, like, that's my passion. It's like book meets stationery. Stunning. So thank you for liking that video and watching that video, and I will leave it at that. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it, and I will see you when I see you.